Owen Daniels settled into Seat 2A on Arcadia Air Flight 342, a red-eye journey from Boston to San Francisco. He wore a tailored charcoal suit and carried himself with the kind of calm composure that often drew admiring looks, though no one would guess he was actually the CEO of the very airline operating the plane. The flight was scheduled to last around 6 hours, and it promised to be a standard overnight trip for most. For Owen, however, it was a discreet inspection of his company's service and safety standards. Shortly before the airplane door closed, flight attendant Ashley Reed performed her usual cabin checks. Ashley was known among her colleagues for her sharp attention to detail and insistence on order. She had a reputation for maintaining strict discipline in the cabin, never hesitating to enforce the rules with unwavering resolve. When she approached Owen to confirm his drink preference, he requested a simple glass of water, politely explaining that he liked to stay hydrated during long flights. In the mild buzz of first class, soft conversation filled the air as a few business travelers powered down laptops and a couple of vacationers flipped through glossy travel magazines. Owen glanced around, pleased to see that everything looked neat and orderly. No one, including Ashley, had yet realized his true identity. Owen rarely announced his presence on these checkup flights. He believed in blending in with other passengers so he could observe how situations unfolded naturally. Moments before pushback, Ashley was finalizing seatbelt checks in the row behind Owen. A muffled dispute erupted between a passenger and another flight attendant, drawing Ashley's attention momentarily. Distracted, she hurried back to the front of the cabin. In her haste, she bumped into Owen's shoulder. Owen politely said it was all right and even offered a kind smile, but Ashley's response was unexpectedly cold. It was as if she had looked at him, judged him, and decided he was at fault. Then, in a single, shocking instant, she slapped him across the face. Gasps rippled through the first-class cabin, echoing off the overhead bins. Owen's cheek stung from the sudden assault, and passengers quickly turned in their seats to see what had happened. For a brief moment, he was too startled to speak. Ashley herself appeared taken aback by her own action, but she recovered quickly and fixed him with a glare that suggested she believed she was justified. The cabin grew tense. Owen instinctively pressed a hand to his smarting cheek, grappling to understand how a mild encounter could escalate so swiftly. As he fought to maintain composure, the public address system chimed, signaling the captain's announcement about departure. Yet all Owen could focus on was the flood of eyes staring at him and the sobering realization that his own employee had just struck him in front of a cabin full of people. Still rattled by the slap, Owen sat quietly in his first-class seat, replaying the incident in his mind. His cheek burned with both pain and incredulity. A murmur of voices behind him revealed that several passengers had witnessed the assault. Many seemed as confused as he was. The seatbelt sign flicked on, and the airplane finally began to taxi toward the runway. Owen knew he couldn't let this pass without addressing it, but he also needed to be cautious. His goal, after all, was to perform an honest, unobtrusive inspection of Arcadia Air's service, not to create drama. Yet it appeared drama had come to find him. He observed Ashley Reed moving methodically through her next set of tasks. Her composure was eerily unshaken, as though she had done nothing out of the ordinary. She avoided eye contact with Owen and busied herself by reviewing safety protocols with the other flight attendants. Despite that show of calm, he sensed an underlying tension in her every move. As the plane lifted off from Logan International Airport, the world outside shrank into a grid of glittering city lights. The cabin lights dimmed, and a curated safety video played on the screens. Owen, however, found it almost impossible to focus on anything but the throbbing in his cheek and the unsettling behavior of Ashley. Why had she acted so vehemently? Had he somehow offended her without realizing? When the seatbelt sign switched off, Ashley reappeared in the aisle, pushing a drink cart. Most of the first-class passengers were either settling in with the in-flight entertainment or closing their eyes to catch some rest before touching down in California. As she neared Owen, a pang of nervousness made his stomach tighten. He dreaded further confrontation, yet he felt compelled to speak up. Before he could say anything, though, Ashley placed a napkin on his tray table with a little too much force. She kept her gaze averted, lips pressed together in a tense line. She muttered something under her breath, faint, but laced with hostility. Owen took a steadying breath. "Excuse me," he said in a low, calm voice. "We need to address what happened earlier." Ashley stiffened. She glanced around, perhaps noting the interested eyes of passengers. Then, with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes, she leaned in. "Sir, I have a job to do," she replied, her tone clipped. "It would be best if you let me continue my duties." A man in the row across from Owen, who had been monitoring the tension, cleared his throat. "Are you okay, buddy?" he asked Owen softly. "I saw what happened." Owen offered him a tight nod. "I'm fine. Just shocked." Ashley's expression grew more severe at this brief exchange. She hastily handed out beverages to the remaining passengers, slamming containers onto tray tables with barely concealed annoyance. Then, just as she began to steer the cart back toward the galley, a passenger on the other side of first class bumped into the tray, knocking over a small bottle of sparkling water. The liquid splashed across the floor, and Ashley let out a sharp hiss of irritation. With a glare directed at Owen, who was in no way responsible for the spill, she muttered what sounded like a slur. Several people overheard it, and shocked gasps punctuated the cabin's hush. Owen's eyes narrowed. His heart pounded in his chest. He'd encountered prejudice in his life, but never so blatant and never in the very airline he oversaw. A wave of anger and sadness welled up within him, battling for control. He knew he had to do something, but how? Revealing his identity might abruptly shift the power dynamics on this flight. He wanted to see how the staff would handle adversity without knowing he was their CEO. Yet the racist remark changed everything, ignoring it would mean condoning her behavior. He pressed the call button. Slowly, Ashley made her way over, forced courtesy shining through her clenched jaw. "Yes," she said curtly. Owen breathed deeply. "I heard what you said. This kind of language is unacceptable. We need to speak to the captain, or perhaps speak to someone who can help address this." A flicker of fear danced across Ashley's eyes, but it was quickly replaced with indignation. "I don't know what you think you heard," she retorted, "but you must be mistaken." The hush in the cabin was deafening. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Some recorded the interaction on their phones, capturing every word. Owen realized a single moment of bigotry could unravel years of carefully built goodwill for Arcadia Air, not to mention the human cost of hateful language. He pressed his hand to the call button again, a silent declaration that he refused to be ignored. Ashley stiffened, glaring at him with barely disguised contempt. Little did they both know, this was only the beginning of a far more turbulent encounter, one that would soon spiral out of control and affect every person on board. Despite the tension that had filled the premium cabin, the flight continued on its path over the patchwork of Midwestern landscapes, cruising at around 35,000 feet. For the next stretch of time, Owen Daniels tried to gather his thoughts. He considered the implications of confronting Ashley Reed publicly versus attempting a more discreet approach. The world around him felt unnervingly quiet, as though everyone on board was waiting to see what he would do. Yet for a while, he chose to observe rather than speak further. About an hour into the flight, the plane experienced mild turbulence. The captain, Franklin Cole, made a brief announcement, urging everyone to remain seated and fasten their seatbelts. Ashley passed through the first-class aisle to ensure compliance, skirting around Owen's row as if proximity alone might spark another argument. He noticed her tense posture, shoulders tight, jaw set, eyes flicking about distrustfully. Nearby, a few passengers watched her every move. Even those from the main cabin, curious about the earlier commotion, peered forward when the curtains parted slightly during her checks. After the turbulence subsided, Owen decided the time had come to address what had happened. He pressed the call button again. Moments later, another flight attendant, a young man named Victor Morgan, approached with a polite smile. Victor looked apprehensive, as though he already knew about the conflict with Ashley but was uncertain how to handle it. "Sir, how can I help you?" he asked quietly, leaning in so only Owen could hear. Owen cleared his throat. "I'd like to speak with the captain as soon as possible," he said, keeping his voice low to avoid further spectacle. Victor glanced over his shoulder, likely searching for Ashley. "Is this an emergency?" "I believe it's serious," Owen replied, though not a physical emergency. "It's a matter of conduct. If Captain Cole is available, I need to speak with him." Victor nodded, promising to relay the message. Minutes later, the seatbelt sign blinked off again, and the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, inviting Owen to come speak with him near the cockpit door. Mustering his composure, Owen released his belt and walked through the aisle, noticing the hush that fell over the other passengers. When Owen reached the front, Captain Cole stood just outside the cockpit, arms crossed. He was a tall man in his early 50s, with a well-trimmed mustache that gave him a stern, no-nonsense air. His uniform was crisp, a testament to the pride he took in his role. However, his eyes held a trace of impatience, as though he already had an inkling of what Owen would say. "Sir, I understand you wanted to speak to me," Captain Cole began, glancing at Owen's passenger manifest details in a small electronic tablet he held. It was standard for the crew to have every passenger's name on hand, but evidently, no special note flagged Owen's presence as the CEO. "Yes," Owen replied carefully. "I'm a passenger in first class. There's been a serious incident involving a member of the cabin crew, Ashley Reed. She physically assaulted me before takeoff and followed it up with a hateful remark." The captain's brow furrowed, and for a moment, Owen hoped he would receive a fair hearing. Instead, Captain Cole's lips formed a thin line. "I've already spoken to Ms. Reed," he said. "She suggests there was a misunderstanding. And as for the slap," he trailed off, not looking entirely convinced either way. "She claims she reacted in self-defense." Owen felt his heart sink. "I didn't threaten her in any way," he insisted. "Multiple passengers witnessed it. Her slap was completely unprovoked. And the language she used, there were people who heard that, too." Captain Cole shifted his weight, glancing at the cockpit door. "Look, Mr. Daniels, we're high in the air, and we want to avoid panic. Ms. Reed is a senior flight attendant with a nearly spotless record. If she made a claim that you were being aggressive, I have to consider it." The unfairness of the situation struck Owen like a blow. He realized that, as a seemingly random passenger, he didn't have much clout. Revealing he was the CEO might instantly alter the dynamic, but it would also defeat his original intent to see how the employees handled real issues on their own. Nonetheless, the problem had escalated well beyond a routine check on customer service. It now called for immediate action. "I assure you, Captain," Owen continued, choosing each word carefully, "I'm not the person causing trouble. I've asked for calm discussion. I've asked for a chance to defend myself. Is there a protocol we can follow to ensure fairness?" Captain Cole let out a slow breath. "Protocol is to maintain order," he said curtly. "Between your word and Ms. Reed's, it's difficult to find resolution mid-flight. I will keep an eye on the situation, but for now, please return to your seat." Stunned by the brush-off, Owen fought to remain collected. He pivoted and walked back, aware that a few onlookers tried to catch his eye, perhaps hoping for an update. Sliding into seat 2A, he noted that Ashley loomed at the galley entrance, her gaze cold. He tried not to let his frustration show, but anger licked at the edges of his composure. He grabbed his phone, on airplane mode, of course, and began typing a message in the Notes app. If the captain and the head flight attendant refused to treat him fairly, he needed a record of everything that happened. Documentation would be crucial. Across the aisle, a kind-faced passenger offered a small smile, clearly sympathetic. Owen gave a nod of thanks, grateful for the silent support. A few rows back, another traveler whispered something to their companion while pointing toward Owen. Rumors were surely spreading about what had transpired. Over the next half hour, Owen watched Ashley move through the cabin, though she avoided contact with him completely. Victor Morgan, the junior flight attendant, seemed uneasy, as if torn between loyalty to his coworker and wanting to do the right thing. Owen weighed the idea of enlisting Victor's help. Perhaps the younger attendant would be more receptive to hearing the truth and could verify parts of the story if the captain or authorities later demanded eyewitness accounts. When the clock inched closer to midnight, the lights in first class dimmed further, and a hush filled the air. Outside, only the faint glow of stars and occasional flashes of distant city lights peeked through the window. Owen braced himself mentally. He had no intention of letting Ashley's actions go unanswered. But how could he make sure the truth surfaced? And what if the rest of the crew, including Captain Cole, continued to side with her? These questions lingered ominously in his mind. Little did he know, the worst was still to come. Several hours later, Arcadia Air Flight 342 was cruising smoothly somewhere over the Rocky Mountains, the faint outline of jagged peaks silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Most passengers had tried to sleep at least a little, but tension remained thick in the front cabin. Owen Daniels had managed to doze for a few minutes, only to wake repeatedly with the memory of Ashley Reed's slap and the captain's dismissive attitude playing through his head like a broken record. Meanwhile, Ashley's demeanor grew increasingly strained. She offered forced smiles to other travelers while casting icy glares in Owen's direction, as though blaming him for her own burst of aggression. Victor Morgan, the junior attendant, was the only crew member who seemed genuinely concerned about Owen's well-being, although he, too, acted cautiously, as if afraid any open display of kindness toward Owen might earn him Ashley's wrath. Around 3 a.m, local time, the aircraft hit another patch of turbulence. The captain's voice resounded over the speakers, advising everyone to remain seated with belts fastened. Owen felt a jolt as the plane briefly dropped, and a chorus of startled gasps rippled through the cabin. Ashley, apparently in the middle of refilling a passenger's water cup, stumbled, splashing water onto the floor. She whirled around and practically snarled at Owen, as if it were somehow his fault. A knot of anger twisted in Owen's stomach. He glanced at the overhead bin above him, where he had stored a small carry-on. Inside it, among his travel necessities, lay documents confirming his identity as CEO, along with a business card listing him as Arcadia Air's top executive. He had hoped not to reveal these documents until after the flight, but Ashley's unrelenting hostility was pushing him to consider it sooner. Maybe, if she and the captain realized who he truly was, they'd back down. But would that truly solve the deeper problem? Just as the turbulence began to subside, an unexpected announcement came through the PA system, this time from Ashley herself. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a minor situation in the first-class cabin," she said in a firm voice. "Due to a disruptive passenger, we need everyone to remain seated. We appreciate your cooperation." Alarm bells went off in Owen's head. Disruptive passenger? He was certain she meant him, even though he'd done everything to stay calm. Sure enough, moments later, a pair of uniformed airline security personnel, an air marshal and a plainclothes officer who had remained discreet for most of the flight, appeared at the front of the cabin. Ashley pointed toward Owen, loudly proclaiming he had been disorderly and posed a threat to the crew's safety. Shocked, Owen stood, hands open in a gesture of non-aggression. "I have no idea what she's talking about," he insisted. "I'm just sitting here." The air marshal, a stocky man with a measured presence, asked him to step into the aisle. "Sir, we need you to remain calm," he said. "We've received reports that you might have been harassing one of the flight attendants." "Harassing?" Owen repeated, his tone tinged with disbelief. "I was assaulted. Other passengers can confirm it." A handful of bystanders nodded in agreement or offered supportive murmurs. Yet Ashley raised her voice again, claiming that she'd felt threatened by Owen's aggressive manner, and that his behavior made her fear for her safety. Captain Cole appeared behind them, arms folded, looking perturbed but not entirely surprised. Owen realized they had likely spoken about this behind closed doors in the galley. "Sir," the plainclothes officer chimed in, "we need your cooperation. We're not removing you from the plane at this point, but we do ask that you move to a seat in the back so we can keep things under control." The suggestion offended Owen. He hadn't done anything to warrant being singled out and relocated. He opened his mouth to protest, then noticed the worry in the eyes of the passengers around him. This was heading toward chaos, one false move, and he might end up physically restrained. He lifted his hands to chest level, palms outward. "All right," he said. "I'll move. But this is a grave misunderstanding." Gathering his belongings, he allowed the officers to guide him down the aisle. Whispers and curious glances followed in his wake. In the economy section, he was given a middle seat near the back, hardly comfortable but at least it minimized the direct conflict with Ashley. The air marshal stationed himself in a nearby row, where he could keep an eye on Owen. Adding insult to injury, Ashley announced over the PA that the issue had been contained, but that the crew would remain vigilant. Seated among anxious travelers, Owen felt frustration burn through him. He opened the notes on his phone again and continued typing every detail he could recall, the exact words Ashley used, the timestamps on the flight path, the reaction of the other passengers. He also scribbled a plan to text or email key Arcadia Air personnel the moment they landed, especially his trusted executive assistant, Celia Locke. He knew he'd need help navigating the fallout of this incident, which was shaping up to be catastrophic. From his vantage point in the back, he noticed Ashley and Captain Cole talking in hushed tones near the galley. Ashley shook her head vehemently, and the captain frowned. Owen suspected they were doubling down on their story, that Ashley was the victim, that Owen had been the aggressor. The entire situation was backward, and while a few passengers were on his side, he couldn't ignore the disquieting power dynamic of flight staff backed by the captain's authority. At one point, Victor Morgan slipped into the aisle near Owen, pretending to check overhead compartments. He cast a quick, concerned look in Owen's direction. Owen gave a small nod, and Victor returned it, as though silently confirming that he didn't believe Ashley's claims. It was a tiny glimmer of empathy in an otherwise hostile environment, and it gave Owen a flicker of hope that not everyone on board had turned against him. With San Francisco still hours away, Owen realized he'd be trapped in this tense environment until they landed. He felt certain the trouble wouldn't end with the flight. Ashley had made sure of that when she labeled him disruptive. He thought about revealing his role as CEO right there in the cabin, but he suspected that might only escalate matters. If Ashley and Captain Cole had already decided on a narrative, they'd find a way to spin his identity reveal as a desperate attempt to dodge blame. His phone's clock read shortly after 4 a.m. Eastern Time. The flight was far from over, and a knot formed in his gut as he imagined how the arrival might play out. Would law enforcement greet him at the gate? Would the media learn about this incident? The more he pondered, the more convinced he became that he had to gather irrefutable evidence, and perhaps allies. A single voice might be ignored, but multiple accounts, videos, and official records would be harder to dismiss. Huddled in the cramped seat, Owen resolved to keep his cool, no matter how infuriating the situation became. He thought back to the values he'd instilled in Arcadia Air from the day he'd founded the company: respect, honesty, empathy. If Ashley and Captain Cole represented a deviation from those principles, he would make sure it didn't go unchecked. He refused to let prejudice and abuse of power tarnish the company he'd built with integrity. And so, with a deep breath, Owen braced himself for the next wave of conflict, determined to maintain his composure and seek justice at the earliest opportunity. After another tense few hours, dawn broke over the horizon. Warm, golden rays filtered through the airplane windows, illuminating the cramped quarters in the back of the plane where Owen Daniels sat. Passengers stirred awake, the cabin filled with the sounds of stretching limbs and hushed conversation. The lingering sense of unease persisted, though, a testament to the overnight drama that had yet to be resolved. Roughly an hour before landing, Captain Franklin Cole's voice boomed over the public address system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting our initial descent into San Francisco soon. Flight attendants will be coming through the aisles to collect any remaining service items. Please make sure to follow their instructions." Even as the routine announcement concluded, Owen's gaze swept toward the front of the cabin. He caught a glimpse of Ashley Reed, who maintained the same rigid posture and stern expression. In stark contrast, Victor Morgan looked especially anxious, like someone wrestling with moral conflict. Owen wondered if the young attendant might eventually share the truth about what had happened, or if fear of retribution would keep him silent. Then came the landing itself. The aircraft shuddered gently as the wheels touched the runway. A round of polite applause filled the cabin, a common reaction to a safe landing, but Owen found it ironic given the tumultuous flight. He couldn't muster the same relief. Instead, a knot formed in his stomach at the thought of what would happen once they disembarked. As the plane taxied to the gate, Ashley made another pointed announcement: "We request that passengers remain seated while authorities address an incident that occurred on board. We appreciate your cooperation and patience." Her tone was coldly professional, but Owen recognized the implication. She intended for him to be handed over to security or law enforcement. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. He had his documentation, and there were witnesses who knew he was not the aggressor. The truth would come to light, but he had a feeling it wouldn't be easy. When the seatbelt sign finally switched off, a flurry of activity took over. The door opened, and two airport security officials, along with a uniformed San Francisco police officer, stepped onto the plane. Ashley promptly guided them to the back cabin, where Owen sat with his carry-on on his lap. She launched into a rehearsed explanation of how this disruptive passenger had posed a threat. The police officer looked from Ashley to Owen, then back to Ashley, evidently gauging the situation. "Sir," the officer said to Owen, "I need you to come with us for some questions." Owen rose slowly, retrieving his travel documents. "I'm happy to cooperate," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "But I would like to make a statement of my own, and I have witnesses who can confirm what really happened." Ashley's eyes narrowed. Before she could speak, however, Victor stepped forward. He glanced at the officer, then at Owen, then finally at Captain Cole, who hovered near the front galley. In a trembling voice, Victor said, "I saw everything. Mr. Daniels didn't do anything to threaten Ms. Reed." Owen felt a wave of gratitude for the young attendant's courage. Ashley shot Victor a glare so fierce it could have scorched metal. "Victor," she hissed, "this isn't the time." The police officer raised an eyebrow. "If you're a witness, I'd like you to come along, too." Shifting his focus back to Ashley, he added, "Ma'am, I'll need you to provide your side of the story outside." With that, the small group disembarked before the rest of the passengers. As they stepped into the jet bridge, the officer guided them to a private waiting area near the arrival gate. Meanwhile, curious travelers peered at them through windows, cameras flashing. Social media was likely already buzzing about the confrontation on Arcadia Air Flight 342. Once inside the waiting area, the questioning began in earnest. Ashley recited her accusations, accusing Owen of aggressive behavior, intimidation, and stirring conflict among passengers. She even claimed that his manner had been threatening from the moment he boarded. Captain Cole nodded along grimly, implying he trusted his flight attendant's account. Owen noted how skillfully Ashley weaved half-truths into her statements, making it sound as though she had acted purely in self-defense. Then came Owen's turn. He calmly explained each detail, from the unprovoked slap to the bigoted remark to Ashley's campaign of hostility throughout the night. He showed them the notes he had taken on his phone, complete with timestamps. More importantly, he revealed who he was, the CEO of Arcadia Air. Ashley's face paled, and Captain Cole stiffened with alarm. The officer's gaze flicked toward Ashley, confusion evident in his eyes. The revelation changed the room's dynamic drastically. "You're the CEO?" the officer asked, as though he needed to hear it twice to believe it. Owen nodded. "I didn't want to disclose my identity mid-flight because I was hoping to see how issues are handled without special treatment." Clearly, that backfired. He turned to Ashley and Captain Cole. "I value my employees, but not at the expense of ethics. I won't tolerate prejudice or abuse on my airline." Victor, still visibly nervous, corroborated Owen's version of events. He described Ashley's slap, the slurs she used, and how she manipulated Captain Cole's authority. The police officer listened intently, occasionally scribbling notes. While it was clear both sides would require thorough investigation, the mounting evidence favored Owen's account. At length, the officer instructed Ashley, Captain Cole, and Victor to remain available for further questioning. To Owen, he said, "We'll need a formal statement at the station, but for now, you're free to go. This is a serious matter, and the district attorney might follow up. Would you be willing to press charges, Mr. Daniels?" Owen hesitated. Part of him wanted immediate justice, but another part recognized that pushing for criminal charges might overshadow any broader reforms he hoped to implement at Arcadia Air. "I'll need to think about that," he finally said. "Right now, I just want to ensure the truth comes out, and that the airline takes the appropriate steps." In the ensuing hours, the story exploded on social media. Early morning travelers at San Francisco International Airport posted videos of Owen being escorted off the plane, speculating about everything from an attempted hijacking to a personal feud. As soon as he regained cell service, Owen contacted his executive assistant, Celia Locke, briefing her on the situation. She, in turn, alerted the company's legal team. They promised to gather any security footage from inside the aircraft. Meanwhile, a few passengers had already posted clips of Ashley's confrontation with Owen, racking up thousands of views within minutes. Owen also texted a close friend in media relations, sharing his side of the story and sending copies of the unedited phone videos he had collected. He wanted the public to understand the reality, not just the sensationalized accounts swirling online. Moreover, he was painfully aware that being a CEO and an African-American man in a high-profile conflict could draw polarizing reactions. The press would likely dig into his life, searching for any detail to spin a narrative. Yet Owen remained resolute. He wouldn't let fear or public scrutiny silence him. Before the day was over, Ashley and Captain Cole found themselves suspended pending an internal investigation. Arcadia Air released a brief statement acknowledging a serious incident on Flight 342. Publicly, the company promised full cooperation with law enforcement and apologized for any distress caused to passengers. Behind the scenes, Owen had phone conferences with board members, explaining what had unfolded and assuring them he would address the systemic issues that allowed an employee to behave so brazenly, and get immediate backing from a captain. Standing outside the airport's arrival hall, the California sun warming his shoulders, Owen exhaled a heavy sigh of relief. Though he had emerged vindicated, the experience left emotional scars. Yet it also reinforced his commitment to rooting out prejudice and abuse of power within his airline. He had always believed in leading by example, and now he had the most compelling proof that he needed to double down on employee training, oversight, and accountability. As camera crews scrambled nearby, eager for a statement, Owen straightened his posture and made a silent vow: he wouldn't rest until he'd implemented real change. The flight had ended, but a greater battle lay ahead, one that he intended to face head-on, armed with the truth, his integrity, and a steadfast belief that justice could and would prevail. Owen Daniels felt as if his day had already lasted a week by the time he left the private waiting area at San Francisco International Airport. A swirl of conflicting emotions hung over him: relief that he'd been able to expose Ashley Reed's behavior, anger that Captain Franklin Cole had sided with her for so long, and a quiet dread about what might come next. The police officer's questions kept replaying in his mind, interspersed with images of Ashley's accusatory glare. Though Owen was nominally free to go, he knew his fight was far from over. He stepped into the arrivals hall, where bright daylight and curious onlookers combined to create an unsettling sense of exposure. A small crowd had gathered, some travelers who had witnessed the aftermath on the plane, others who had caught wind of the drama through social media updates. Owen's phone buzzed constantly with incoming messages. Arcadia Air employees, reporters, and even personal friends reached out to learn what had happened. He silenced his phone for the moment, longing for a moment's peace. "Mr. Daniels." A voice called from behind a security barrier. It was Celia Locke, his trusted executive assistant. She wore a crisp suit and clutched a thin tablet to her chest. Her expression was a mixture of concern and relief. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I got here as fast as I could." They retreated to a relatively quiet corridor near a line of vending machines, away from the main flow of foot traffic. Celia's eyes brimmed with sympathy as she scanned Owen's face. The stress lines around his mouth and eyes spoke volumes. "I appreciate you coming," Owen said softly. "It's been unbelievable." Celia nodded. "I've already started coordinating with our legal team. They're gathering any internal documents that might shed light on Ms. Reed's history of passenger complaints or any disciplinary actions. Right now, the plan is to cooperate fully with law enforcement's investigation. The board is also eager to talk to you. Let them know I'll brief them, but I need a little time to collect myself," Owen replied. "First things first, we need absolute clarity about what happened up there. If there's any security footage from the plane, or if other passengers have video, we must secure copies." Celia tapped her tablet. "We've already found some social media posts with passenger recordings of the confrontation. People are tagging Arcadia Air left and right. I'm gathering them in a shared folder." "Thank you," Owen said, exhaling. "Good work. Let's keep pushing for more evidence." In the next hour, they made their way to Arcadia Air's local office near the airport. The space housed administrative staff and a few meeting rooms often used for flight crew briefings. Word of Owen's arrival spread quickly. Several employees watched from a distance, whispering amongst themselves as he walked past. Owen was well liked by many in the company, known for championing fair policies and a progressive workplace culture. To see him at the center of a scandal was jarring, to say the least. Celia led him to a private conference room, where two of the company's in-house lawyers, Miriam Keyes and Raoul Bennett, were already waiting. On the table lay piles of documents, laptops, and a large pot of coffee. Owen offered a terse smile and sank into a chair. He felt exhaustion settling into his bones. Miriam spoke first. "Mr. Daniels, we understand the situation is evolving, but we've got some immediate recommendations. First, we suggest releasing a short public statement that acknowledges an incident took place, highlights our commitment to fairness, and indicates we're conducting a thorough investigation. Second, we want to confirm your stance on pressing charges or filing formal complaints." Owen paused, the memory of Ashley's slap fresh in his mind. "I'm leaning toward pressing charges," he admitted. "If we allow this behavior to go unchecked, it sets a terrible precedent. But let's see what the investigation uncovers in full. I want a coordinated approach, no impulsive moves." Raoul nodded. "Understood. Also, we've been informed that a federal agency might get involved. There's talk that an FBI unit was alerted because Ms. Reed and Captain Cole initially framed this as a potential security threat. The details are murky, but they might question you again soon." Owen's jaw clenched. So, from victim to security threat, unbelievable. "All right, let's be ready. Collect every piece of exonerating evidence we can. I won't be bullied into silence." After an intensive brainstorming session, Celia updated Owen on external developments. The story had leaked to major news outlets, and headlines ranged from sensational to outright false. Some outlets portrayed Owen as a radical passenger who'd assaulted a flight attendant, others reported it as a blatant case of discrimination against him. The swirl of conflicting narratives made it clear that controlling the messaging would be tricky. Social media is a war zone, Celia warned, tapping a screen. Hashtags about Arcadia Air are trending. People are comparing this to past airline controversies. Some are even calling for boycotts until the truth is revealed. Owen rubbed his eyes. Let them. If that's what it takes for us to finally address discrimination in air travel, so be it. But we need to set the record straight quickly. Just as the team deliberated on the phrasing of a press release, a call came through Celia's phone. She answered, listened, and then passed it to Owen with a worried expression. "It's the FBI," she mouthed. "They want to talk to you right now." He took the phone, heart pounding. "This is Owen Daniels." A calm, measured voice introduced herself as Special Agent Irene McNally. "Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels. I'd like to arrange a time for you to visit our local field office. We have some questions regarding an incident on Arcadia Air Flight 342. Owen forced himself to stay calm. "Of course. May I ask the nature of these questions?" "Preliminary statements suggest there may have been accusations of theft and potential threats to the crew," Agent McNally replied, choosing her words carefully. "We want to clarify the facts. You have the right to an attorney present if you wish." "I'll have my legal counsel with me," Owen responded, noticing Miriam and Raoul nod in agreement. "When would you like me to come in?" They scheduled a meeting for the following day. After Owen ended the call, the room fell silent. Miriam looked uneasy, while Raoul tapped a pen on his notepad. Celia folded her arms, eyes stormy with concern. "Well," Owen said, breaking the tension, "we wanted the truth to come out. If it means dealing with the FBI, so be it. We'll prove these accusations are baseless." The next few hours flew by in a blur of phone calls, video conferences, and urgent emails. Owen's personal assistant arranged accommodations for him at a nearby hotel. Returning home that evening was out of the question, given the early morning FBI appointment. Meanwhile, the legal team cranked out a concise public statement, which read: Arcadia Air can confirm that an incident occurred involving our CEO, Owen Daniels, on Flight 342. We take such matters very seriously. An internal review is underway, in addition to ongoing law enforcement involvement. We remain committed to transparency, fairness, and the safety of all passengers and employees. It was short, but it would have to suffice for now. By the time the statement went live, Owen was drained. He retreated to the hotel suite Celia had booked, where he found it almost impossible to sleep. His mind spun with thoughts of the next day's interrogation, the potential blowback for the airline, and the deeply personal impact of being attacked by a person who should have been dedicated to passenger care. But amid the turmoil, he felt a spark of resolve. Ashley Reed's racist remarks and her brazen violence had ignited something in him. If there were any shadows of bias lurking within Arcadia Air, it was time to bring them into the light. Tomorrow's meeting with the FBI might be another storm, but Owen was determined to face it head-on. He had the truth on his side, and he intended to use every resource at his disposal to make sure justice was served, not just for himself, but for everyone who'd ever suffered unfair treatment while flying. The next morning arrived far too quickly for Owen Daniels. He woke from a restless night in the hotel, the faint city sounds filtering through the windows. A dull ache pressed against his temples, fueled by anxiety over the impending meeting with the FBI. Even so, he forced himself to dress with care, putting on a subdued navy suit and a simple tie. Optics mattered, especially now, and he wanted to project the calm confidence befitting a leader, even if he felt anything but calm inside. Celia Locke was waiting in the lobby, along with lawyers Miriam Keyes and Raoul Bennett. Together, they rode in a black sedan to the FBI's local field office. The ride was quiet, each occupant lost in thought. At one point, Celia reached over and patted Owen's arm, offering a small, supportive smile. He was grateful for her presence, though he couldn't quite return the smile just yet. Special Agent Irene McNally met them in the building's lobby. She was a poised woman in a charcoal gray pantsuit, her manner professional yet not overtly intimidating. "Mr. Daniels," she greeted, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming in." Owen shook her hand. "Of course," he replied. "I'm eager to clarify any misunderstandings." Agent McNally guided them to a nondescript conference room with beige walls and a long wooden table. A few framed prints of city landmarks provided the only splashes of color. As they settled into their seats, a second agent, tall, lean, and stone-faced, entered, introduced himself as Agent Carson Nunez, and sat next to McNally. "We appreciate your cooperation," Agent McNally began, flipping open a file on the table. "We've received statements from multiple parties involved in the incident on Arcadia Air Flight 342, including the flight's captain, Franklin Cole, and the attendant, Ashley Reed." Owen noticed her deliberate phrasing. She didn't say accusations just yet, which told him she was treading carefully. He cleared his throat and offered his own prepared statement. "I want to reiterate that I was the one assaulted. I have witnesses, as well as social media evidence, corroborating that Ms. Reed struck me without provocation and used hateful language toward me. If there are any theft allegations, I'd like to see their basis." Miriam Keyes slid a flash drive across the table. "Here you'll find videos recorded by passengers, audio clips of Ms. Reed's remarks, and official statements from those who witnessed the confrontation. Also, we have Mr. Daniels' personal account, along with timestamps referencing the flight manifest." Agent McNally accepted the flash drive. "We'll review these materials carefully. At the moment, the theft accusation stems from Ms. Reed's claim that you, Mr. Daniels, took something from the galley area without permission. She's been vague about what was taken, some mention of high-value electronics. Captain Cole's statement indicates he saw Ms. Reed confronting you over it." Owen's eyebrows shot up. "That's absurd. I never took anything from the galley. Nor do I have any reason to." Celia glanced at Owen, her face a mask of restrained irritation. "We believe Ms. Reed fabricated this story to justify her aggression," she said. "Alternatively, she might be trying to leverage a security angle, hoping it'll overshadow her misconduct." Agent Nunez tapped a pen on the table. "We're aware of the possibility of false claims. That's part of why we reached out to you. The accounts from multiple passengers suggest Ms. Reed's story is inconsistent. However, we still need official statements to close out the matter. We can't ignore any mention of theft or safety threat on an aircraft." Owen nodded. "I understand. I'm prepared to provide any information you need. I'll make myself available for follow-ups if necessary." For the better part of 2 hours, the agents asked Owen to recount the events in minute detail. He explained how Ashley Reed had initially been curt, then escalated to an outright slap, followed by racist remarks. He described Captain Cole's refusal to believe him and his subsequent relocation to the back of the plane. Miriam and Raoul interjected occasionally to clarify certain points or provide additional context. The atmosphere remained professional, but the tension was palpable. In the final stretch of the interview, Agent McNally brought up Arcadia Air's internal dynamics. "Mr. Daniels, you're the CEO. Were you incognito on that flight?" Owen hesitated, then admitted, "Yes, I often fly discreetly to observe how employees interact with passengers when they don't know my position. I never imagined something like this would happen." "That's understandable," she replied. "Do you suspect Ms. Reed recognized you at some point, or might this have been purely a case of bias based on your appearance?" Owen sighed. "I'm not certain. My instinct tells me she didn't realize who I was, but that doesn't explain her aggression or bigotry. Even if she had recognized me, it wouldn't justify her behavior." Agent Nunez closed his notebook. We have enough for now. We'll cross-check your statement with the flight logs, the crew's statements, and any physical evidence. For the time being, you're free to go, and we'll be in touch if we need anything else. We appreciate your candor. Miriam and Raoul exchanged glances that seemed to say, so far, so good. The four of them, Owen, Celia, Miriam, and Raoul, exited the FBI office and walked back into the bright midday sun. A swirl of relief, uncertainty, and lingering frustration churned within Owen. This was just one step in a longer process, he knew. They reconvened at a nearby cafe to debrief. Raoul ordered coffee for everyone, and they settled around a small table in a quiet corner. Celia scanned the news updates on her tablet. We're trending again, she murmured. Some outlets are focusing on the alleged theft, but more are covering your side of the story. The video evidence is making a significant impact. There's a wave of public sympathy. Miriam nodded thoughtfully. The FBI interview was crucial. If Ms. Reed or Captain Cole tries to double down on the false theft claims, the authorities will be more skeptical of them now. Owen sipped his coffee, tasting its bitterness. I'm relieved the feds seem open-minded. But we can't underestimate how stubborn Ashley and Captain Cole might be. They might dig in to protect themselves or spin a narrative to save face. The conversation turned to Arcadia Air's board of directors. Celia had set a video conference for later that afternoon. Several board members wanted direct updates from Owen, given the media storm. The airline stock prices had dipped slightly amid the negative headlines, but some industry analysts speculated it could rebound once the company took decisive action against wrongdoing. By late afternoon, Owen found himself in yet another conference room, this time in the Arcadia Air headquarters on the outskirts of the city. The large monitor at the head of the table flickered to life, revealing the faces of 5 board members scattered across different regions. Their expressions ranged from concerned to resolute. Owen, began Deborah Layton, the board's chairperson, we've heard the broad strokes. I want you to know the board unanimously supports a thorough investigation. However, there's also the airline's reputation to consider. Have you thought about how to manage the public perception that an Arcadia Air employee could behave so egregiously? Owen leaned forward, bridging his hands on the table. This is about more than public perception, Deborah. It's about the truth. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and violence, and that policy must apply equally to all employees, even a veteran flight attendant like Ms. Reed or a senior pilot like Captain Cole. I intend to follow through, no matter how messy it gets. Another board member, Lionel Grant, nodded. That's the stance we're hoping for. We built this airline on principles of inclusivity, and it's horrifying that any staff member might violate those values. You have our support, Owen. With the board's endorsement, Owen felt a surge of determination. They discussed next steps, a comprehensive internal review, likely with an independent third-party auditor to ensure impartiality. They also talked about potential PR strategies, from hosting public Q&A sessions to developing new training programs on diversity in conflict resolution. By the time the call ended, dusk was falling outside the headquarters' tinted windows. Owen had spent the entire day battling a crisis he never asked for yet now felt compelled to address head-on. He left the building with Celia, inhaling the fresh air that came with the cooling evening breeze. Despite the fatigue gnawing at him, he knew they were making progress. The FBI had heard his side, the board stood behind him, the public, at least partially, appeared sympathetic. We're moving in the right direction, Celia ventured as they reached the parking lot. Even though it's nowhere near done, today was a step forward. Agreed, Owen said, managing a small smile. We're holding our ground. Next step is to see what the FBI does with the evidence, and how Ashley and Captain Cole respond. Whatever lay ahead, Owen Daniels had no intention of backing down. The path to justice might be long, but he was prepared to walk it, fueled by equal parts anger, resolve, and unwavering commitment to the principles he had always championed. The following days stretched out like a labyrinth of depositions, strategy meetings, and an unrelenting media spotlight. Owen Daniels juggled calls with Arcadia Air's legal advisors, updates with the FBI, and a seemingly endless stream of journalists clamoring for exclusive interviews. He politely declined most offers, preferring to let the facts, and the mounting video evidence, speak for themselves. Meanwhile, Ashley Reed and Captain Franklin Cole had gone on the defensive. Owen's team learned through various channels that both had retained their own lawyers. Leaked snippets of their depositions hinted at a unified strategy, portraying Owen as a passenger who willfully provoked Ashley, ignoring her instructions and challenging her authority. They continued to peddle the theft accusation, though the specifics were murky and contradictory. Arcadia Air's board stood firmly behind Owen's efforts to investigate and, if necessary, discipline both employees. However, the airline's reputation now faced even more public scrutiny. Some media commentators questioned how an airline that prided itself on customer service and inclusivity could harbor staff willing to engage in violence and bigotry. Stock prices dipped further, rattling a few investors. In a private meeting, Deborah Layton, the board chairperson, asked Owen whether he wanted to step back from public statements while the controversy played out. "No," Owen replied firmly. "If I hide, it'll look like I have something to hide. I need to be visible and proactive. Otherwise, the narrative gets away from us." And so, with the board's approval, Owen organized a live-streamed press conference in Arcadia Air's main terminal at San Francisco International Airport. On a crisp morning 2 weeks after the incident, he stood at a podium in front of a cluster of microphones. Reporters and camera crews crammed into a roped-off area, while travelers passing through the terminal stopped to watch. Celia Locke and other executives flanked him, their faces somber. Owen's statement was direct: "I come before you as both the CEO of Arcadia Air and as the passenger who experienced a harrowing ordeal on Flight 342. I want to state unequivocally, violence, discrimination, and false accusations have no place in our airline or in any workplace. Arcadia Air is fully cooperating with the ongoing investigations. We will not waver in our commitment to truth and justice, and we will enact any reforms needed to ensure this never happens again." He fielded a barrage of questions, some supportive, others skeptical. One reporter asked whether he believed Ashley Reed had acted alone or if the airline's culture was flawed. Another pressed him on the specifics of the alleged theft. Owen calmly reiterated that he had taken nothing and that multiple witnesses confirmed his account. While he couldn't speak to Ashley's personal motives with absolute certainty, he underscored that prejudice in any form must be confronted head-on. By the time he stepped away from the podium, perspiration dotted his forehead, but he felt a surge of relief. The press conference had given him a chance to put forth a clear, unwavering stance. Public response was mixed. Some viewers commended his transparency, while others questioned whether a CEO could truly be unbiased in an investigation involving his own company. Still, it was a risk worth taking, and the board appreciated his forthright approach. In the days following, more developments unfurled. Agent Irene McNally contacted Owen to inform him of new details gleaned from passenger interviews. Based on consistent testimony, it appeared that Ashley Reed had a history of friction with certain travelers in the past, though never anything as explosive as this. One older couple on Flight 342 admitted that they overheard Captain Cole making derogatory comments about Owen after the incident, suggesting that he didn't belong in first class. Such revelations only deepened the sense of betrayal Owen felt. At the same time, an unexpected ally emerged, Victor Morgan, the junior flight attendant who had stepped forward with the truth during the initial confrontation. Through quiet channels, he relayed more insights to Owen's legal team, describing how Ashley often complained about passengers she deemed unworthy of premium seating. Victor also confirmed that Captain Cole had seemed to encourage Ashley's complaints, rather than advising her to remain professional. Privately, Owen invited Victor for a one-on-one meeting at a cafe near headquarters. There, over warm mugs of coffee, the young attendant confided his growing fears about retaliation. "Ms. Reed and some of her supporters on the crew are acting like I'm a traitor," Victor said, hands shaking slightly. "They're hinting that I might lose my job." Owen regarded him with compassion. "You did the right thing, Victor. I'm sorry you're facing backlash. I promise you, I'll do everything in my power to make sure no one retaliates against you." Victor visibly relaxed, though a cloud of worry still hovered in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels. This whole thing makes me question whether I can stay in this industry. But I also can't stand by while injustice happens." Owen nodded. "I hope you stay. Aviation needs people who stand up for what's right." That same week, Arcadia Air's internal investigation progressed. Independent auditors combed through complaint logs, crew performance evaluations, and training records. They found an unsettling pattern. Ashley Reed had a handful of past complaints that involved accusations of rude conduct or unfair treatment. Those complaints had never escalated to a formal investigation, until now. Captain Cole, for his part, was implicated by multiple staff members for contributing to a toxic dynamic on certain flights, particularly those with diverse passenger rosters. Celia frequently updated Owen on the investigators' progress. Late one evening, she sent him a short message: "Findings are starting to form a pattern. We may be dealing with more than an isolated incident." When the internal review neared completion, the board called for a special meeting to discuss preliminary results. This time, they convened in person at the airline's newly refurbished executive conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a bustling runway, where planes touched down and took off under a clear, blue sky. Owen sat at the head of a long table, flanked by the board members, legal counsel, and the investigators. The lead auditor, a meticulous woman named Stephanie Carlton, stood to present their discoveries. She spoke in measured tones, outlining concerns about how the complaint system had failed to catch and correct problematic behavior. "In Ms. Reed's file, we located 3 prior passenger complaints that mentioned discriminatory or inappropriate conduct. Each was dismissed after a cursory review. There is no record of Captain Cole being questioned about or reprimanded for his reported involvement in those incidents. Clearly, the system allowed these red flags to slip through." The gravity of her words weighed on everyone in the room. Deborah Layton frowned, folding her hands. "That's alarming," she said. "And, frankly, unacceptable." Owen felt a sense of vindication, tinged with disappointment. "We stand for better than this," he said quietly. "We must fix it." Stephanie continued, describing how lines of authority and a culture of cronyism might have shielded Ashley Reed and Captain Cole from scrutiny. "It's also worth noting," she added, "that 2 of these complaints involved passengers of color who felt singled out. One even mentioned overhearing remarks about them not fitting in with the usual, first-class clientele." A hush settled over the room. Owen exchanged a glance with Celia, who gave a solemn nod. This was precisely what he feared might be lurking under the surface: systemic bias. The problem wasn't merely one slap on a plane, it was an entire environment that had allowed such misconduct to ferment. When Stephanie concluded, Deborah looked to Owen expectantly. "Well, Owen. Next steps." Owen stood, taking a moment to gather his words. "First, we'll finalize the disciplinary measures for Ms. Reed and Captain Cole once the official investigations, both internal and by the FBI, are complete. Second, we're overhauling our complaint review process. No more cursory reviews. Every grievance will be tracked and addressed thoroughly, with mandatory oversight by an independent party. Third, we're launching immediate diversity and ethics training for all crew members. And if that means re-evaluating or replacing staff who won't uphold our core values, so be it." A murmur of agreement swept the table. It felt like a turning point, a collective acknowledgement that real reform was overdue. The meeting ended on a note of determined resolve, each board member tasked with specific action items, from budget approvals to communication strategies. Yet, amid the determination to move forward, Owen knew more challenges lay ahead. He'd seen rumors online that Ashley's lawyer was preparing a countersuit, possibly claiming discrimination against her for being a long-standing employee defending airline policy. Captain Cole, too, was threatening to sue the airline for defamation. The notion that they might try to paint themselves as victims after all they had done was infuriating, and ironically emblematic of the very culture Owen aimed to change. As he left the conference room, Owen paused to watch a plane roar into the sky. The aircraft's white fuselage sparkled in the sunlight, a symbol of travel, freedom, and exploration. He couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Arcadia Air deserved to live up to. He also galvanized Owen, and everyone who believed in the airline's promise, to rebuild it stronger and more just than ever before. Barely a week passed before Ashley Reed and Captain Franklin Cole made their next move. They filed a joint civil complaint against Owen Daniels and Arcadia Air, alleging wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. Though the airline had not yet officially fired them, both employees had been suspended pending the investigation's outcome. Their legal maneuver sent a clear message: they would fight any attempt to hold them accountable. Owen received the news in the early morning, courtesy of an urgent phone call from Raoul Bennett. The frustration in Raoul's voice was palpable. "They're playing the victim," he said. "Their complaint basically says that you orchestrated a conspiracy to ruin their careers. The timing couldn't have been worse." Owen was preparing for a scheduled interview on a popular morning show to discuss updates on the incident and Arcadia Air's new reforms. He glanced at the clock. He needed to leave in 20 minutes. "We'll respond properly," he told Raoul. "For now, I have to keep my composure on live TV." At the television studio, bright lights and a flurry of activity surrounded him. A makeup artist hurried to powder his face while producers set up camera angles. The host, a poised woman named Veronica Wynne, greeted him warmly just before the broadcast began. "We appreciate your willingness to speak candidly," she said. Owen offered a polite smile, trying to push aside the news about Ashley and Cole's complaint. He knew the viewers needed to hear about the positive changes Arcadia Air was initiating: improved training, stricter complaint oversight, and greater transparency. He also anticipated that Veronica would ask about the incident itself. Soon enough, they were live on air. Veronica jumped straight in. "Mr. Daniels, you've publicly stated your airline is committed to rooting out discrimination. Can you share the steps Arcadia Air is taking right now?" Owen detailed the new processes and apologized once more to any passengers who had suffered from staff misconduct in the past. He emphasized that while the investigation was still ongoing, the airline was determined not to repeat the errors that led to this crisis. Then came the question he dreaded: "We understand Ashley Reed and Captain Franklin Cole have just filed a lawsuit. They're claiming you defamed them. How do you respond?" He inhaled slowly. "I can't comment extensively on active legal matters, but I can say this: the evidence speaks for itself. Numerous passengers, flight attendants, and even video footage corroborate that Ms. Reed acted inappropriately and that Captain Cole supported her narrative. We're confident the truth will prevail in court if it comes to that." Veronica pressed gently. "Any concern about this lawsuit escalating?" "I believe in our legal system," Owen replied, "and I trust that once the facts are laid out, it will be clear who is truly responsible for what happened on Flight 342. After the interview, social media buzzed with reactions. Some praising Owen's calm, forthright approach, others doubting the sincerity of corporate promises. But the interview largely played in his favor, painting him as a steady hand under pressure. Ashley and Cole, on the other hand, were nowhere to be seen in public, except for one heavily edited phone interview on a local station where they repeated their claims of being unjustly targeted. In the days that followed, Owen focused on strengthening Arcadia Air's internal defenses. He met repeatedly with the legal team, orchestrating strategies to counter Ashley and Cole's complaint. Miriam Keyes spearheaded this effort, building a robust case file that included statements from Victor Morgan and other crew members who had witnessed the tension or prior behavior patterns. They aimed to show a consistent pattern of misconduct that validated the airline's suspension of both individuals. Meanwhile, FBI Special Agent Irene McNally kept Owen informed of her progress. Though the theft accusation looked more and more fabricated, she made it clear that the legal process could be lengthy. "Unfortunately, we can't rush these things," she noted over the phone. "But preliminary findings align with your version of events." Despite the legal battles and public scrutiny, Owen felt a shift inside Arcadia Air. Employees who had once grumbled about training sessions or new policies began taking them more seriously. A sense of solidarity emerged among many staff, spurred by a collective desire to uphold the airline's reputation for excellence and inclusivity. Some who had felt marginalized before came forward with stories, now more confident they'd be heard. It was a bittersweet development, comforting that change was happening, sobering that it took a scandal of this magnitude to spark it. One afternoon, after a long day of depositions and meetings, Owen stood in the nearly empty executive lounge at the airline's headquarters. He gazed out at the runway through a glass wall, watching an Arcadia Air jet ascend into the dusk. He thought about how easily that Flight 342, could have been a routine check, a brief trip from Boston to San Francisco. Instead, it had changed his life, exposed flaws in the company he loved, and ignited a complex pursuit of justice. He closed his eyes, letting the low rumble of departing planes fill the silence. The path forward remained uncertain, entangled in lawsuits and investigations. Yet he reminded himself of his core belief, that speaking the truth, no matter how difficult, would illuminate the way. His commitment to fairness, to accountability, would guide him through the storm. With that thought in mind, Owen squared his shoulders and left the lounge, determined to see this fight through to the end, no matter how rough the turbulence might get. A hush fell over the courtroom as Owen Daniels took the stand. The suit filed by Ashley Reed and Captain Franklin Cole had progressed more rapidly than anyone anticipated, fast-tracked by public scrutiny and a judiciary system keen on resolving such a high-profile dispute. News cameras gathered outside the building in a swirl of flashing lights and restless reporters, but inside, the proceedings were all business. Ashley and Cole sat at a table on the plaintiff's side, each accompanied by their respective attorneys. Ashley avoided eye contact with Owen, her expression a mask of cold indignation. Cole, for his part, kept glancing around the courtroom as if searching for support. Both had chosen to appear in uniform, a move that Owen's counsel considered a blatant attempt to stir sympathy. Owen inhaled, bracing himself as the plaintiff's lead attorney launched into a series of questions designed to paint him as an overreaching executive. They implied that his presence on the flight had been a sting operation, a scheme to catch unsuspecting employees in minor infractions and punish them severely. Owen answered calmly, recounting how he often flew discreetly to observe real passenger experiences, and how he had never before encountered anything as serious as what occurred on Flight 342. Then came the crux of Ashley's accusations, that Owen had defamed her by publicly calling her behavior violent and discriminatory. Her lawyer argued that these labels tarnished her career. With a clear voice, Owen cited the videos, passenger testimonies, and, most damning, Ashley's own remarks on the flight. He recounted the slap, the hateful language, and her subsequent attempts to misrepresent him as a security threat. Watching from the gallery, several of the passengers from Flight 342 nodded along, having been called as witnesses to corroborate his story. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. When it was time for Owen's attorney, Miriam Keyes, to cross-examine Ashley, she methodically presented the incriminating evidence. Ashley tried to deflect, but her answers wavered under the mounting contradictions. Next, Captain Cole faced a similar dissection of his account, forced to explain why his statements differed from multiple eyewitness reports. His demeanor shifted from confident to visibly unsettled. The day concluded with a flurry of legal arguments. As the judge adjourned, Owen felt his heart hammering. Tomorrow, closing statements would be heard, and the jury would deliberate. Stepping outside the courthouse, the press mobbed him, shouting questions. He offered a measured response, reiterating his trust in the legal process. He didn't linger, though. The emotional toll was immense. That evening, Owen joined Celia Locke, Victor Morgan, and a handful of supportive co-workers at a modest dinner. They were mentally exhausted yet determined. Victor was still worried about backlash, but seeing Ashley and Cole struggle in court gave him a measure of validation. "I just want to tell the truth," he said, voice trembling slightly. "That's all." Owen gave the young attendant a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "You've done more than that, Victor. You took a stand when it mattered most." The next morning arrived with an electric sense of finality. In a packed courtroom, the lawyers delivered their closing statements. Ashley's and Cole's attorneys insisted that their clients were victims of a corporate vendetta. Miriam Keyes spoke last on behalf of Owen and Arcadia Air, stressing that holding employees accountable for misconduct was neither vengeance nor discrimination, but a necessary step to protect both passengers and the integrity of the airline. Then came the wait. The jury deliberated for several hours, the courtroom's tension building with each passing moment. Finally, they returned. The foreperson handed a slip of paper to the judge, who read the verdict in a clear, measured tone. The jury found in favor of Owen Daniels and Arcadia Air on all major counts, determining that Ashley and Cole's claims of defamation and wrongful termination were unfounded. A subdued gasp of relief rippled through the spectators. Ashley remained stone-faced, while Cole slumped. Their lawyers looked resigned. Meanwhile, Victor let out a shaky breath, and Celia shot Owen a tremulous smile, eyes bright with tears. Owen closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the gravity of the outcome. Outside, the cameras flashed yet again. This time, Owen stood a little straighter, though not with triumph, but with solemn resolve. He told the assembled media, "This has been a painful process for everyone involved. But truth matters, and accountability matters. Arcadia Air remains committed to doing what's right. We'll continue to reform our policies, improve our training, and earn back the trust of all our passengers." In the days that followed, Ashley Reed and Captain Cole faded from the public eye. Their legal options narrowed, and any hopes of appealing the verdict seemed unlikely to succeed given the wealth of evidence against them. The airline stock began to stabilize, and the public, though still watchful, seemed willing to give Owen and his leadership team a second chance. Returning to his office after the final press conference, Owen gazed at the panoramic view of the runways. Planes soared into the sky, symbols of the very freedom and exploration that had drawn him to aviation in the first place. He let out a deep breath, feeling the slow uncoiling of tension in his chest. While the ordeal had left scars, on Owen personally, on the airline's reputation, and on the staff who had witnessed such blatant prejudice, he believed firmly that it had also laid the groundwork for a stronger, more inclusive future. A future where men like Victor could speak up without fear, and where passengers knew they were truly valued, regardless of the color of their skin, their background, or their seat assignment. With that thought, he turned back to his desk, where a stack of pending reforms awaited his signature. There was still work to be done, but at least now, he could do it with the confidence that justice had, at last, prevailed. In the days following the courtroom victory, Owen Daniels found himself caught between cautious relief and a desire to push his airline toward genuine transformation. Although the jury had ruled in favor of Owen and Arcadia Air, dismissing Ashley Reed and Captain Franklin Cole's lawsuit, he knew plenty of work remained. Public trust, once bruised by the scandal, wouldn't heal overnight. Almost immediately, Owen convened a post-trial forum in Arcadia Air's largest conference hall. Employees from all levels were invited: pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, customer service agents, and administrative staff. The space thrummed with anticipation as hundreds gathered, curious about what changes lay ahead. The atmosphere was markedly different from earlier meetings, where tension and uncertainty reigned. Now, at least, there was a sense of direction. At the front of the room, Owen stood at a lectern with Celia Locke to his right and a panel of senior executives to his left. Large screens behind them displayed Arcadia Air's mission statement, emphasizing customer safety and inclusivity. Owen took a measured breath and addressed the assembly. "I know the past few months have tested us," he began, his voice resonating across the hall. "But I also believe these challenges have brought us closer to understanding who we really are as a company, and who we strive to be." He glanced at the screens where key initiatives flickered in neat bullet points: enhanced bias training, a revamped complaint process, and a mentorship program aimed at bridging communication gaps between crew members. Owen explained each in turn. He promised that every employee would have a safe avenue to report misconduct and that the airline's leadership would respond transparently. As the forum transitioned into a Q&A session, a flurry of hands rose. One flight attendant asked whether all staff would receive immediate training or if it would be rolled out gradually. Another wondered how Arcadia Air would ensure that no one faced retaliation for speaking up. Owen and the panel took turns addressing these concerns, underscoring that new policies were structured to protect whistleblowers and to enforce accountability at every level. Midway through the session, Victor Morgan stood. His face reflected a mixture of nerves and courage. The young attendant had been a key witness against Ashley Reed, and many employees recognized him from company updates. "I just want to say," he began, voice wavering slightly, "that standing up for what's right was scary. But the support I've felt since then has been overwhelming. If we keep listening to each other and treating each other with respect, I believe we can really move forward." Thunderous applause followed, a clear sign that staff members had taken note of Victor's bravery. Owen felt his chest tighten with gratitude. He knew the battle for justice had been about more than just clearing his own name, it had been about empowering voices like Victor's and cultivating an environment where prejudice had no safe harbor. In the weeks after the forum, the renewed emphasis on training and open dialogue gave the airline a jolt of energy. Flight attendants reported smoother interactions with passengers, and complaints, those still present, were handled promptly. To maintain transparency, Owen released monthly bulletins detailing how many grievances were filed, how they were investigated, and what outcomes resulted. It was a radical shift from the hush-hush approach of the past, but one that many employees welcomed. Outside the company, the media's attention slowly pivoted to other headlines. Although a smattering of opinion pieces debated whether Arcadia Air was engaging in damage control, most coverage acknowledged the sincerity of the airline's reforms. Customer feedback, gauged through post-flight surveys, indicated rising satisfaction levels. Some passengers even shared their positive experiences on social media, praising the newly improved crew responsiveness. One evening, after a long day spent refining new HR policies, Owen strolled through the airline's main terminal, pausing by a gate where an Arcadia Air flight had just boarded. He observed a flight attendant helping a traveler stow a heavy carry-on, smiling warmly as she reassured the passenger. Watching the scene, Owen felt a wave of cautious optimism. He couldn't be certain how far these changes would go or how resilient they'd prove in times of future stress. But in that moment, Arcadia Air no longer felt like an embattled entity. It felt hopeful, resilient, and on the cusp of genuine renewal. As he turned to leave, his phone vibrated with a message from Celia, a reminder about the next morning's schedule. New policy rollouts, staff feedback sessions, and planning for an employee appreciation day. Owen grinned, tucking the phone away. There was still a mountain of work ahead, but for the first time in months, he felt convinced they would climb it together. The sun had barely risen when Owen Daniels arrived at Arcadia Air's corporate training center. He carried a travel mug of coffee and wore a simple white dress shirt with the airline's logo on the lapel. Today marked the official launch of the Diversity and Ethics Training Program, arguably the most ambitious employee development initiative in the company's history. The training center itself was sprawling, with half a dozen classrooms that could accommodate 100 participants each. Owen's first stop was Room A, where a group of newly promoted flight attendants prepared for a day of instruction. Their schedule covered everything from conflict de-escalation to recognizing unconscious biases. An energetic instructor, Maria Rojas, greeted Owen with a warm smile. "We're all set for the morning session," she said, gesturing toward a projector screen that displayed the Arcadia Air logo alongside the words empathy in action. "Thanks for stopping by, Mr. Daniels." Owen offered a nod. "No, thank you for helping us make this change real. I appreciate the effort you and your team have put into this curriculum." As the first participants filed in, Owen quietly observed from the back. Maria kicked off the session with a succinct statement: "Every passenger has a story. Part of our job is ensuring those stories aren't overshadowed by prejudice or neglect." Her words echoed lessons gleaned from the Flight 342 scandal. Owen recalled how Ashley Reed had marginalized him purely based on her own biases, never considering he might actually be the CEO of the airline, let alone a valued human being. He hoped these training sessions would prevent similar scenarios in the future. After spending half an hour observing, Owen moved to another room, where Celia Locke supervised a workshop geared toward mid-level managers, including ground crew supervisors and some pilot liaisons. The workshop focused on leadership accountability, teaching attendees how to respond swiftly to complaints while maintaining clear, respectful communication. Celia glanced up from her notes, smiling. "Everything's running smoothly," she told Owen in a low voice. "Most are receptive, but a few are skeptical. We're trying to address their concerns about what real accountability looks like." Owen nodded. "That skepticism is expected. Some worry they'll be blamed for honest mistakes, or that the process might get weaponized. But if we're transparent, and if we treat each case with fairness, we can show them this isn't about punishment, it's about building trust." By mid-afternoon, the training center buzzed with lively discussions as participants tackled case studies and role-play scenarios. More than once, employees brought up the events of Flight 342, which had become a pivotal reference point. Trainers welcomed those references, emphasizing how real-life examples underscored the importance of respectful communication and the profound consequences of bias. While walking down a hallway, Owen happened upon Victor Morgan, who was scheduled to give a short talk in one of the sessions. Victor looked both excited and nervous, fidgeting with a stack of index cards. "I'm supposed to share my story and how it felt to speak up against injustice," he explained. "Public speaking isn't exactly my forte, but I believe in this." Owen gave him an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Just be genuine. People connect with honesty more than polished speeches. I'm proud of you." Later, in the cafeteria, staff lounged on break, sipping coffee and exchanging thoughts on the modules they'd covered. An older mechanic told Owen he appreciated the emphasis on bridging generational and cultural gaps. Another employee, a customer service agent, admitted she felt intimidated at first but was glad the airline was tackling issues head-on. By early evening, as the inaugural training sessions wrapped up, feedback forms revealed a largely positive response. Participants praised the interactive approach, the nuanced case studies, and the willingness to address the airline's recent scandal openly. Several also requested follow-up sessions to continue practicing the new skills they'd learned. Owen convened a final debrief with Maria, Celia, and other key facilitators. They analyzed feedback data, pinpointed areas needing refinement, more hands-on role-play time, for instance, and finalized dates for subsequent sessions. Though the day had been exhausting, a spark of accomplishment lit their faces. Stepping outside, Owen inhaled the crisp evening air. The sky was awash in vibrant oranges and purples, a fitting backdrop for the sense of renewal he felt. The transformation of Arcadia Air wouldn't happen overnight, but these training sessions were a critical step toward building a workforce that understood the power of empathy, integrity, and mutual respect. As he headed to his car, Owen spotted a group of employees chatting animatedly near the parking lot. Their laughter carried on the cool breeze, a far cry from the tension and dread that had haunted the airline just weeks ago. He caught Celia's eye, and she smiled, as if to say, this is what progress looks like. And Owen couldn't help but agree. A month after the court ruling, Arcadia Air unveiled its new Employee Advocacy Council, capping a wave of reforms aimed at restoring faith in the airline. Comprised of a diverse mix of flight attendants, pilots, ground staff, and corporate executives, the council's mission was to address grievances swiftly and ensure no concern went unheard. For Owen Daniels, its formation felt like the final piece of a complex puzzle. One bright afternoon, he attended the council's inaugural meeting, listening intently as members introduced themselves and discussed ideas for improved communication channels, mentorship programs, and community outreach. Celia Locke, who chaired the gathering, announced a plan to partner with nonprofits that specialized in fostering inclusivity, offering even more perspectives for Arcadia Air employees. After the introductions, Victor Morgan presented a short video message from a few of the passengers who had witnessed the events on Flight 342. In these clips, they expressed gratitude for the airline's swift reforms, hoping their stories would inspire positive change industry-wide. The council members clapped warmly. A palpable sense of unity rippled through the room. Owen stood to address the group. The ordeal on Flight 342 revealed gaps we needed to fill. It also reminded us that no organization is immune to prejudice or misconduct. But we've proven that when we unite around our core values, we can correct course. Let's make sure the improvements we've made endure for future generations of Arcadia Air employees and passengers. The applause that followed felt genuine. The council dispersed to plan subcommittees, each focusing on a different facet of the airline's operations. Some would refine hiring practices, others would expand the diversity and ethics training. Everyone, it seemed, was eager to contribute. In the corridor afterward, Owen and Celia lingered by a set of large windows overlooking the tarmac. Sunlight glinted off a recently repainted Arcadia airplane, its silhouette framed against the horizon. It felt like a symbol of renewal, of scars acknowledged yet transformed into lessons for the future. We've come a long way, Celia remarked, eyes fixed on the plane taxiing toward the runway. Owen nodded, recalling the tumult of legal battles, the sleepless nights, and the moments of doubt when he wondered if the airline could truly recover. I'm proud of everyone who stepped up. This isn't just about me, it's about how far we can go when we confront challenges together. As if on cue, an aircraft roared overhead, ascending into the clear, wide sky. Much like Arcadia Air itself. Owen turned away from the window, a renewed sense of purpose guiding him. There would always be more work to do, more battles to fight for inclusivity and fairness, both within the airline and beyond. But for now, with the council established and the staff aligned behind a common cause, it felt like a victory worth savoring. Life often places us in difficult situations where doing the right thing is neither easy nor convenient, yet it remains essential for our personal growth and for the well-being of those around us. Owen's experience shows that unwavering integrity and compassion can shed light on injustice, even when powerful forces push back. His journey teaches us the importance of speaking up against discrimination, no matter how intimidating the opposition might seem, and the value of perseverance when striving for what is fair and humane. By maintaining his composure under intense pressure, Owen demonstrated that true leadership is about safeguarding the dignity of all people, not just those who wield authority. He also discovered that real change doesn't happen in isolation, it requires cooperation, empathy, and a willingness to listen, even to those we might initially disagree with. Through open dialogue and a commitment to transparency, he inspired those around him to challenge old, damaging norms and helped create a more inclusive environment in his organization. This story reminds us that trust is fragile but can be rebuilt through accountable actions, honest conversations, and consistent respect for one another's experiences. Ultimately, the power of truth is amplified when we unite around common values, protect those who speak out, and hold ourselves and others accountable for harmful behavior. These lessons apply not only in corporate boardrooms, but also in everyday life, where a single act of fairness or kindness can ripple outward and encourage others to do the same. If this message resonates with you and you believe in spreading principles of empathy, integrity, and justice, please support this channel. Like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps ensure we continue sharing stories that remind us all how important it is to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds.